Can you please tell me your full name at birth?
Lena Long.
What was your middle name? Did you have a middle name at birth?
Oh, no.
And was Long your maiden name? That was your name at birth?
My maiden name was Lena Navis. N-A-V-I-S.
N-A-V-I-S?
N-A-V-I-S, like Davis.
Okay, and what was your birth date?
September 20, 1924.
And where were you born?
Baghdad, Iraq.
And were you born at home or in a hospital?
At home.
And was it a doctor or a midwife?
A midwife.
Okay. Do you remember your grandparents' names?
Not my grandparents, only my parents.
Okay, so none of your grandparents, you know their names?
No.
Do you know where they were born?
Probably Baghdad, Iraq.
They were all passed away by the time you were born?
Oh, yeah.
And your parents never talked to you about them at all?
I left, my mom died when I was 5.5, and my dad was not Iraqi. He came from another country.
Okay.
And took us out of Baghdad, Iraq, to Singapore when I was 5.5, so or almost 6. So I wasn't old enough to ask questions.
Okay. Do you know what are your parents' names?
My mother's name was Munira, M-U-N-I-R-A, Ghazala, G-H-A-Z-A-L-E.
And your dad's name?
My dad's name was Daniel Gregory Navis.
Okay, so your mother was born in Iraq?
Yes.
And your father was born where?
My father was born in Bangalore, India.
And how did they meet?
Oh, my father was in the British Army, and they were headed to South Africa, but before they got there, they were ordered to turn around and go to Baghdad, Iraq. And when they got there, the war soon after was over, and instead of going back where they came from, he and his buddies stayed in Iraq and married Iraqi women.
And do you know, how did they meet each other?
No, I have no idea. I figured living in Baghdad, Iraq, no, I have no idea how they met.
Did they speak the same language?
No, my dad spoke a lot of languages, but not Arab, not Arabic.
And did your mother ever learn to speak any of the languages? How did they speak to each other?
Oh, my mother spoke English and Arabic.
Oh, okay.
And my father soon learned. He was very good with languages, so he soon learned how to speak Arabic.
Okay, so when they met each other, they both spoke English?
Yes.
Okay. You said your mother died when you were 5 years old. Well, first tell me, do you remember living in Iraq?
Yeah, a little bit.
Where was the first place you lived? When you were born, where did they take you back to?
All I remember is we lived in a house with an upstairs and downstairs.
And how many bedrooms?
Oh, I've no idea.
You don't remember any of that. And it was in Baghdad, this house?
In Baghdad, yes.
Okay. And what was your father doing for a living at the time?
Working on the railroads. I don't know exactly what he was doing, some kind of railroad work at nights, work nights.
And did your mother work, or was she a housewife?
She was a housekeeper.
Okay. Describe your parents to me. Do you remember what your mother looked like?
Oh, yeah. My mother had very fine features. She was full-blooded Iraqi. She had wavy hair and a very straight nose. I remember that part. She had a very gentle, kind look on her face.
And what about your father?
My father, people called him handsome. He was about a little bit darker than I am. And he was a good-looking man. That's all I can say about him.
Do you remember your mother? How she was? Was she funny? Was she the disciplinarian?
The disciplinarian, doesn't come to my mind at all. All I think of her as gentle, soft-spoken person who was so bullied by my father that she got very quiet, and I don't remember her. I remember her moving around, but not anything she said.
So he was a very domineering person?
My father?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Was he domineering towards her and you?
All of us. Bullied us, assaulted us, I hate to say all this on the video, but my father was assaultive, abusive, incestuous, the whole thing.
Where do you think that came from? Do you think his parents were abusive?
I'll tell you where I think it came from. He never told us.
Careful with your hand on the mic.
He never told us anything about it, but when I heard the story about the Catholic priests doing what they did to the altar boys, my father was an altar boy, and I believe with all my heart that he got abused, and that's where all that anger was coming from, that he never told anybody. He left India and joined the army because of that. I think this is my story, and I believe it.
Do you think he loved the kids and your mother?
He didn't know what love was. He was violent, assaultive, threw furniture around. He had a terrible temper, and everybody feared him.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had, a pair of twin boys died in infancy, and one boy died in infancy. That was Baghdad, Iraq, so in long time ago. But I ended up with an older sister, 14 months older, a younger brother, 14 years, did I say? 14 months. And my younger brother was 3 years younger than me. I'm losing it.
So there were 3 siblings that survived?
And my mother died in childbirth. My father was at work. The midwife was there, but I think she had left by then. And my mother just bled to death. All she had to do was massage her abdomen until the uterus would get hard and clamp down on the blood vessels. And there was nobody to do that, so she just bled to death.
So the midwife left and there was nobody there with her?
Yeah. And we were I was 3 years old. Something.
Were you in the house?
Oh, yeah.
Did you see her or hear her? Or?
I heard groans calling for help. That's all I remember of it.
So then your father just came home and found her passed away?
He came home at 3 o'clock in the morning, and no, maybe he came home later, I don't know, but I know she died around 10 o'clock in the morning.
And did the baby survive?
Baby survived.
Oh my God.
And she was 6 years younger than me.
Okay, so you have three siblings that lived through infancy.
2 sisters and a brother.
Okay. So let's start with the oldest one, your oldest sister. What's her name?
Ellen Louis. Ellen, Ellen.
And then the next sibling?
Me.
And then the next one?
Vivian. Vivian, but that was a boy.
Okay. And then the last one?
Peggy.
So you were all about 7 or 8 years apart total? Describe them to me.
Them?
Yeah, as little kids, what was Ellen like?
Ellen. Um, we were just siblings until my mother died, and then she became like a mother figure to us.
Well, but she was only 14 months older than you.
Yeah, but she was different from me. She was motherly kind, and she simply thought she had to take care of us because my mother was gone.
But she was only 7 or 8 years old, right?
Right.
So that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we were like twins almost, because we went to school together. We were close together because of my mother being gone and my father being who he was. And so we were close. We sang together, and yeah.
Tell me about Vivian as a little girl.
Vivian,
A boy.
Vivian is
Boy.
my younger brother. He was intimidated by my dad, bullied by him, and so he kind of took his anger out on us, on me, siblings like, and we fought. But there was a closeness that was always there because of what happened to us.
And what about Peggy? What was she like?
Peggy was the baby that when my mother died,
Right.
and so my father did not want us to grow up in Baghdad, Iraq. He wanted us to grow up in British territory. So he took us to Singapore and left Peggy with my grandma. And then when she was 6 years old, some nun from Iraq was going to travel to the Far East, and they sent Peggy with her back to us.
So your dad left her behind with them because he felt he couldn't take care of her because she
Right.
was a baby?
Yes.
So how did things change when your mother passed away? Did your father become more loving or more angry?
My father was determined to take us out of Iraq. He did not want family around. He wanted complete control of us. So he took us from Baghdad, Iraq to Singapore. And he was in the building business. So when he went to work, we went to school, the Catholic school. And when he had contracts like in Hong Kong from Singapore, he would put us in the convent as boarders. One time I remember he was in Hong Kong for a year or more, and we were in the convent all that time.
Wow.
And our life was hellish. It was very, very difficult and bad. The nuns were lovely people. They were nuns. They were Christian people, but the woman that they hired to take care of us was cruel. She was an Indian lady, and she was verbally abusive to us. And she pinched me on my thigh till I had that scar the rest of my life. And we did not like her. And so our life was miserable. And then we got the scabies over there. And my father asked somebody to come and check on us. And they saw us in such bad shape that they told my father. And so when he got back, he took us out of the convent.
So when you weren't in the convent and he was home, who took care of you? Because you were all 7, 8, 9 years old and younger, and he was at work. How did you deal with that?
In Singapore, everybody like that has what we called them servants back then, but now they call them maids. he hired somebody to take
So
care
you
of
had somebody living in the house or there
But
most of the day.
If he was in Singapore and living with us, um, um, we still had the servant.
Right.
But when he was on a contract away from Singapore, he put us in the convent as boarders.
So it sounds like you had kind of a rough childhood. I mean, when your
Oh.
father was there, it was rough, and then when
Oh.
you were in the convent, you said that was also horrible.
Oh, yeah. Our childhood was very traumatic.
Were there, when you look back on it, were there any good times or any things that gave you joy at
As children,
the time?
you know, you don't remember. You enjoy the good moments. So I remember Christmases. My father would get wine and.
Well, we'll get to that. I don't want to jump that far. We're going to get to that. I want to stay when you were a little kid first. Do you remember? Did your father have any interests or hobbies, or was it just work?
Oh, he liked to do all kinds of things. He loved to cook. He loved to distill, to check out to see whether he could make liquor. He was not a drunk. He would drink once in a while. He smoked. He liked to cook, and he always thought he knew it all when it came to a good diet, and cooked for us. And what other hobbies did he have? Oh, he put up a little building in the yard and filled it with goodies, and so the neighbors would come and buy candy and different things. Some things like that he did. What else did he like to do?
Was he a member of any groups or clubs?
No, not my dad. He would not let us have any friends to come stay or for us to stay over with them or to have them. He had such idiosyncrasies, like Singapore was a hot, humid climate, so we all had thick, beautiful hair. He would take off the top layer and shave all the hair under the top layer of hair, and we would go to school and be so self-conscious of this head we were having.
You mean he was like shaving your head down?
Not the top here,
right,
but the back. He would take the layer of hair on top and shave everything under it.
Oh.
And then, of course, when it would show, and our friends would ask us what this was, and we were always.
Why do you think he did that? Because it was so hot?
He had such ideas of health. He thought he knew it all, and so he wanted to keep us cool, keep our heads cool. I don't know why he cared about that when he didn't care about other important things. And then.
So when you say he didn't allow you to have friends, to play with friends, or just he didn't allow sleepovers?
Well, he couldn't do anything about it when we were in school, and we played together and ate together and learned together. But when other kids were had their friends come over, or they come over, he wouldn't let any of that happen.
So after school, you never went to anyone's house to play?
No.
They never came to your house?
And even when the neighbors were out in the yard playing ball and we wanted to go and join them, he wouldn't let us.
What would he say? Did he tell you a reason?
Yeah, no, never gave us a reason. He just told us we couldn't go. I don't know what he was thinking.
I know your mother died when you were only 5, but do you remember anything? Did she have any hobbies or interests or any other things she did?
Those people back then, her mother was living, and she was a dear, godly woman. I think I got the idea of kindness from her. And so when my mother died, my brother was only 3 years old, and she would comfort him, and every time he would cry, she would point up there, and that's where I got my first concept of a God. But what was your question again?
Oh, if your mother had any hobbies or interests.
Oh, my mother. Oh, those people back then, they spent all their time preserving food. They would make big vats of tomato sauce. I remember that so well. And they popped corn a lot. And that Middle Eastern food, they cooked. All I can remember is cooking all the time.
How did your dad react, if you remember, when your mother passed away?
I don't think he was... he treated her so badly that she might have lived... I don't know, I can't say that, but he was not loving at all.
Did he cry when your mother passed away?
No. And he was telling us, cry, and we couldn't cry.
He was telling you to cry?
Yeah, telling us to cry. And I couldn't cry. I don't know, I was frozen, I think. But no, my father, I don't know how to say it. He was quite comfortable with her death.
Did he ever date or marry again?
No.
Not even dated?
No. We took the brunt of it all.
So what qualities do you think you have because of each of your parents? Do you think you have any qualities because of your mother?
Any what?
Qualities.
Qualities of my mother?
Yeah.
Yeah, I am very grateful for my grandmother and my mother. I think that even as a young child, because of trying to avoid memories or awareness of the painful behavior that was going on around me through my father, I saw more angelic behavior in my grandmother and my mother.
Wait, you say your grandmother, but you told me earlier you didn't remember your grandmother.
Oh, that was my mother's mother, but my grandfather was gone by then.
But you knew your mother's mother?
I knew my mother's mother. She was there with us.
Oh, okay, because I asked you about your grandparents. You said they were all gone before you were born.
I was thinking of great-grand.
Okay, so your mother's mother, what was her name?
Oh, I don't remember.
You don't know her name. Was she born in Iraq?
Oh, yeah.
But you remember being around her?
Oh, yeah. Loved her.
What did you call her?
I don't remember. In Arabic. Probably grandma in Arabic.
Right. And what was she like? Describe her to me.
Oh, she was a nice... I wish I had the picture with me. She was a nice-looking... the word I want to use, trying to think of, is she had a very kindly face that you could take to right away. She was no strange she never felt strange around her, and she was always trying to direct thoughts to God and pointing heavenward, and very comforting, soft-spoken. She was appalled at my father's behavior, but didn't know what to do about it. She would have my brother on her lap so much that I remember, because after my mother died, he was 3 and he was crying for her all the time. And my grandmother would have him on her lap and comfort him and tell him, she's always pointing to heaven. But what I remember is being around in the environment is what I remember is the facial expressions and the softness of her voice and her pointing up to heaven. I think that had such a big influence on me for the rest of my life, because I grew up in such a violent environment that I sometimes wonder how I came out of it the way I feel, and how I have gravitated toward God from a very early age.
Did she live near you?
We lived together.
Oh, she lived in the house?
Yeah,
Even after your mother died?
yeah,
Until you moved to Singapore.
yeah.
So you think that's why, one of the reasons he moved, he wanted to get you guys away from her?
Yeah, yeah, he didn't want them around. He wanted full control of us.
Was she devastated when you moved?
Yes.
Did she ever see you again after that?
Never.
So you never saw her again when you moved?
No.
Were you able to talk to her on the phone? Write to her?
Oh, we wrote, but my sister tried very hard to keep contact with our Iraqi relatives, but we lost contact with them. They didn't. For a while they wrote and all, but after a while we lost contact with them.
Did you even know when your grandmother died?
No,
To this day, do you know when she died?
no, I have no idea.
Don't know how she died, nothing.
Well, she was old. Even then, when we left Singapore, she was old.
When she was living in the house with you, was he abusive to her? Would he yell at
He
her?
ignored her, and she just cowered when he had his big outrages. She was one of those little said,
Right.
better. So she didn't argue with him or do anything. He didn't like her because she was so good to us.
Was either of his parents alive when you were born?
My father's parents?
Yeah.
They were in India.
Did you ever meet them?
No.
Never met him?
Never met.
Never talked to him?
No.
Okay.
He came from a family of 11
11.
children. And then he was an altar boy. So when you put all that together, and you don't know what his own parents were like, something got into his craw, and he never resolved it.
Do you think he was proud of you or any of the kids?
Yeah, he was happy to have us, but he knew he didn't have any. He wanted us to have very good education,
Right.
but everything had to be under his control.
Right.
How much freedom we would have.
Right.
Going to school and coming home, that was fine, but that was it. Nothing else. We had to take care of the shop. During the war, I had to wake up at 5 in the morning and make chapatis for the whole neighborhood. They would come to our house to eat breakfast. When the sirens went off, he had built a big trench in the backyard, put seats in it, pews or whatever.
This is in Singapore?
And so everybody would come and be in our shelter when the sirens went off.
This is World War II you're talking
This
about.
is the Japanese occupation of Singapore.
The Japanese occupation.
Of Singapore. And when Pearl Harbor got bombed December 7, we got bombed December 8. And I had just finished writing my senior Cambridge.
All right, well, we're going to get to that. I want to stay early. We're going to get to that. Did your father ever show any affection at all to any of you?
The only affection we felt from him was when he was incestuous with us.
Did you ever talk about any of this with your siblings when they got older?
I think we all knew what was going on, but didn't know how to deal with it. We didn't talk about it until after everything was over.
When did your father pass away?
He was 94 when he died, but he passed away in India. That's a big story, so you want to go there?
Sure, you can tell me that story
Okay. At the age of 16, at the age of 12, I wanted to run away from home, but I had nobody, no relatives in Singapore. So at the age of 16, I thought I could survive no matter what happened on the street, would still be better than what I was experiencing at home. So I ran away. I was supposed to go to school. So I acted like I was going to go to school, catch the bus, and go to school. And I was on the bus. The night before that, a friend of the family, he had been in the army with this man, and it was this man's relatives that for some reason he took us to visit when I was 13 years old. And they told us about the Seventh-day Adventists, the worship on Sabbath and all that. They were making fun of us for going to church on Sunday. But it was this man had sent his wife to Australia with the children so they wouldn't be in the war in Singapore. And it was this man that decided to come to visit us the night before I left home. And he came, and my father at that time was in one of his rages, and he was abusing me verbally so badly. And this man was appalled. So, as strange as it might be, when I was on the bus going to school, my thought was, I'm not going to get... I had approached the nuns and begged them for help, and they didn't know what to do. They said, if you talk like this about your father, you're going to go to hell if you die. And that was all I could get from them. So I just got off the bus at the school. But before I got off the bus, when the bus came to a stop, this man came up into the bus that had visited us the night before. And he came and saw me, stood in front of me, and he said, I was appalled at how your father was treating you last night. And I burst out crying in the bus. I told him, I'm leaving. I'm not going back home. And he was doing everything he could to get me to go to school when the bus came to that. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm determined I'm never going to go back home. And he said, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I think the Lord put that man on the bus because he took me to the home of an older couple. And but I think I begged him not to do it, not to tell my father where I was. But he must have, because the next morning the police were over there. And the older couple got scared and they put me out of the house. They didn't want to be involved in that. So I just walked back into town, and I was trying to think what to do, and I ran into a couple who had rented a room from us where I was living, and they knew me very well. And I told them what I was doing, and they had only one little room, one-room apartment, but they took me in for the night, and the next day they took me in for the night, and they had this French man. They were visiting or whatever, I don't know, but as soon as he saw me, he started speaking in French, saying, I love you and all this. And that's all I needed, you know. I told this couple, I can't stay here. And so I left. I tried to find out where this man that had helped me was. That's the only person I knew. So when I found him, he didn't know what to do with me, and so he took me to. He was an Adventist, a Seventh-day Adventist, so he took me to those people, and the pastor and his wife took me under their wing. And where do you want me to go?
Now, how old were you at the time?
17. About 17.
Okay, so they took you under their wing. Your
Let
father didn't know where you were. Your father didn't know where you were.
When I was that day with this couple that took me in, I came down on the curb just wanting some fresh air and just wanting to be by myself there. And I turned around and there was my father. He saw me. He was looking for me. And he was coming toward me. And I panicked. I started I ran and he ran faster and he was catching up with me and I started screaming and people came out and I was going up the stairs. But when I saw that they had a good hold of him, I came back down the stairs and ran out. And that's when I was looking for that man that helped me. And I found him. He kept me that night. Then he took me to the pastor's. But that episode scared me to death. But after that, my father realized that he was in legal trouble because I needed shelter from him. So he left Singapore and he ended up in India.
Well, he left. What about your siblings?
My siblings. My sister was so desperate to get out of the house when we were all together, and she was 17 then. I was 16. She had a man that was interested in her, and he seemed like a very kindly, nice person. I don't know what moved my father, but he allowed her to marry that man. But he beat them both up when they went out shopping and came home at 10 o'clock. He beat them.
Who beat who?
My father beat the man that my sister was going to marry.
Oh my God! So did she marry him?
Yeah, she married him, and she's a millionaire today. He was a fantastic man.
So she escaped the house by getting married.
Okay, she escaped. They lived in a home, a nice home. And when I left, I thought I would have the liberty to go back and get them from my father. In the meantime, my sister took them into her home.
Your sister took the two younger siblings.
Yeah, into her home.
So she escaped by getting married, you ran away, and then she took the other two siblings. So
right.
Everybody kind of got rescued out of the house
right.
kind of at the same time.
Right.
And did he do anything about that? Did he try to get the younger siblings back from her?
I don't know whether he knew where they were or whether they contacted him to tell him, because they didn't know what was happening. They didn't know I was leaving or that I had left. But everything worked out, thank God. Couldn't have been better, because my siblings were okay.
And then he fled. He went away.
He went to India.
Okay. Did you then stay in contact with your older sister and younger siblings?
Yes, until I became an Adventist. And then that upset them so badly. By that time, the Adventist people had done so much for me and gave me a scholarship to go to America, which I needed desperately. I first worked as secretary. See, the year the Japanese came in, that I had one more year of school. I finished the high school, and I wanted to do a commercial, shorthand typewriting, be a secretary, which I was for an import-export company. Then when the missionaries came back to Singapore, I worked for them. And it was them that gave me a scholarship to go to America.
Okay, let's go back in time. What's your single earliest memory as a child? What's the very first thing you can remember?
As a child? It's Baghdad. The big vats of tomato sauce. And my mother and my grandmother and the furniture being thrown from upstairs to downstairs. stuff like that. Oh, going to school and learning French and speaking French and Arabic and learning English.
So wait, you went to school in Baghdad.
Yes,
So, but you left Baghdad when you were 5?
5.5 almost.
So this is just, you went to like in kindergarten or
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
and you were already learning these different languages in
Yes,
kindergarten?
I remember so clearly being in school and learning French, English, and speaking Arabic, learning English and French.
So they were teaching English and French to kindergartners.
I
Wow.
remember that.
Wow. Do you remember the name of that school? The first school? Was it close to your house? Did you walk to school?
I don't remember.
Okay. Then you move at 5 years old to Singapore.
Let's say 6.
6 years
closer
old.
to 6.
And where were you living in Singapore?
Oh, we got a place to live.
Was it a house, an apartment?
It was apartments. It was a big building with lots of apartments.
And how many bedrooms were in your apartment? Do you remember? Did you share a bedroom with one of your siblings?
Yeah, I shared with my sister.
Okay. And what was the school you went to when you got to Singapore?
The Convent of the Holy Infant Jesus.
Convent of the Holy Infant Jesus.
In Singapore.
And this was a Catholic school?
Yeah.
Were both your parents Catholic?
Yeah.
So tell me about, when did the Japanese occupy Singapore? When you were how old?
December 8th. No, December 8th they bombed us, and it was soon after that that they infiltrated Singapore. They shelled.
But that was 1941, right?
Yeah.
So you were already 17 years old.
But it was 41 in December, so by then
Right.
it was already 42.
Okay. Let's go back earlier than that, though. You were going to the convent, and that was all the way through what grade?
They called it senior Cambridge.
So is that
which
like
is
through
the
high school?
equivalent to 12th grade.
Okay, so you went to that convent all the way through what would be considered high school.
Yeah.
Boys and girls together? Boys and girls together?
No.
Just girls on your side. Okay. Did you ever have dances or anything with the boys? Ever see them?
No boys.
It's totally separate. Okay. But you went home every day from school.
When my father was in
Right.
Singapore, but when he was
Right.
in Hong
Then
Kong.
then you lived there. Do you remember any friends from that school?
No, we lived groups. We lived like groups, you know. We all had bathed in a big place, bathroom. We ate together. All the kids that lived in the convent, we did everything together.
Do you remember any of the nuns that were special to you?
Yeah, I remember them that taught me. They were all French nuns from France. We kind of revered the nuns. I liked the nuns, they were good, but they didn't understand anything about helping children in trouble. Because every time you tried to tell them, they would tell you, child, you know, if you talk like this and you died tonight, you'd go straight to hell. That's all I ever heard from them. And I knew that I could not, when I left home, I wasn't going to get help from them.
So they ignored the help that you needed. They weren't there to save you when you needed it.
They're not only, I wasn't expecting them to save me, I was expecting them to listen to me.
Right.
And do something. Tell me what to do. If they understood me, I would have said, I want to leave home. Would you find a place for me? But God, I believe God intervened in my life because He didn't want me in the hands of those Catholic people. They were their allegiance was with the Pope,
Right.
not with these kids that were in trouble.
Did you feel like you had any relatives you could run to or talk to?
Not a single one in Singapore. My father made sure of that.
Right. So tell me about when the Japanese occupied Singapore. What was that like? How did life change?
Yeah, all of a sudden, we lived in a house that had a lot of grounds, and one day I saw this man dressed like a military coming through the field, and I thought, oh, they're in Singapore now, because we had been shelled and bombed. So life in Singapore during the 3.5 years of Japanese occupation was a life of fear, constant fear, because people didn't understand the Japanese, the local people, and they thought they could go into the military, what you call it, where they had all their goodies and stuff, and they started stealing. And as soon as the Japanese saw that, they got 8 or 9 of them and beheaded them and put their heads on display on buildings. So when I was walking to school, I saw one head on this building.
So you actually saw it yourself?
I saw the head on the building. That's what then they said, in Japan, don't know anything about stealing. You can go to sleep with your front door wide open. So, but those people who were stealing were poor people who thought they might enrich themselves when the opportunity was there. They had no idea it meant the death.
So you were kind of living under constant fear when you were a kid, from one source or another.
I lived in fear from the day I was born. That's why it's been very difficult for me. But if you wanted to know a miracle, it is God who can help you to the point where you are no longer afraid, and you make a life for yourself, and you have kids who are successful. I didn't do that. If I didn't know God, I wouldn't be here today. Look at my son and look at my daughter, and both successful people. How did that happen? That is a miracle of God.
Tell me more about the occupation. What else would go on? How did life change?
Oh, okay. Where we lived, that they occupied the YMCA building and turned it into a torture chamber. So when you walked by, you could hear the groans of the torture they were doing for people that, a lot of those people that they killed in the YMCA were people who were spied on. What I mean is, somebody who didn't like them would go and tell the Japanese that they were listening to the radio. The Japanese would go to their home, take them to the torture chamber, torture them, and kill them. So it was a terrible, terrible time.
And you heard this? You actually heard this yourself?
Oh, we heard the groanings when we went by the YMCA. And they used different kinds of torture, dripping water, going with something under the nail. We heard about that. And then my brother-in-law my sister's husband got taken. Whoever they took, you never saw them again. But somebody who didn't like him had complained that he was listening to the radio. And so they took him in, but my brother-in-law was a godly man, and they let him out. They didn't kill him or torture him.
So the Japanese didn't want people listening to the radio, getting any outside information?
No, if you had a radio, or if somebody had a thing against you, then whether you had a radio or were listening, they would go and tell the Japanese you were, and the Japanese wouldn't ask any questions. They'd go get you. And the import-export company I was working for, that man they took also, and we thought we'd never see him again. But for some reason, the people I knew that were taken were not kept. Another thing is, at nights, they had a building where the military, the soldiers were all gathered. They eat and drink and make merry. and the noise was so bad you could hardly go to sleep. You could hear them cavilling in that building, drunk as they could be. When I went to school, I went to school one more year after the Japanese came in. That's when I took the commercial course. We would walk, and there would be a sentry booth, and he's always standing there with the bayonet. And as you come toward him, up to a certain point, you get down on your knees and say, "Ohayo gozaimasu." And if you didn't do that, or if you got too close and you hadn't done that yet, he comes toward you with the bayonet.
And what was it that you said? What would you say?
"Ohayo gozaimasu," good morning.
So you had to say that in Japanese.
In Japanese. And if you didn't do that, he comes toward you with the bayonet. In my trench, in our trench in the house, when the siren went off, one day, a whole lot of people came into the trench, and among them was a Hungarian man, white, and at that time, all the people from neutral countries had to wear an armband to let the Japanese know that they were not English. So this man hadn't gotten his armband yet, and he came into our trench, and lo and behold, a sentry with his bayonet came into the yard and found us there in the trench. He went to each one saying, "English ka, English ka. Are you English? Are you English?" So stupid. And of course everybody, most of us were like my color. But this man was white, and he took him by the arm and stood him up, and he was going to take him away. My father did have a good side to him, He said, no. He wouldn't let the sentry take him away. And the sentry was the Hungarian man was so scared he couldn't even talk. So my father was trying to tell the sentry, this man is not English. And he didn't know how to get it across to him. And said, no. But because he was white, the sentry was determined he was going to take him. And my father came, he could have bayoneted my father and the man, but my father finally thought, he pointed to that arm and said he doesn't have his armband yet. And finally, through a struggle, I admire my father for his courage. He could have been killed, but they left the man and they left. And I remember that clearly because anything good my father did, I remember. Because I think, why, how? And that's why I believe with all my heart that he was angry from his childhood.
Okay, so you're 17 years old, and you go to live with this pastor. He's the Seventh-day Adventist pastor, correct?
Yeah.
And you go, he has a house?
Oh, yeah.
With a wife and kids?
Oh, yeah. A wife, and the son was in the Japanese occupation, Siamese-Burmese Railroad. They had him prisoner working on that. It was during the war.
So he was a prisoner of war working on the railroad?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the other kids they had sent to Australia. So it was just he and his wife.
And were they nice to you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Loving?
Oh, yeah.
What was that like for you? Because that was the first time you were in that environment.
I soaked it up. I was hungry for people that even recognized me and took me in. And the pastor got very ambitious about making me an Adventist. But I had learned about the Sabbath and all. I knew all that, but I wasn't ready for conversion. I wanted to live a good life, but I didn't want to make any big decisions or changes. But they gave me Bible studies. I was one that was searching for truth. So they gave me Bible studies, made me acquainted. When I was a Catholic, I couldn't have a Bible, and everything was in Latin.
Wait, let's go back for a second. So your parents raised you Catholic,
Yes.
but they didn't want you to have a Bible?
Catholics were not allowed to have Bibles, or they did not have Bibles.
Okay. Did you go to church every
you go
Sunday?
to church, and it's in Latin, a lot of it.
Right.
And so you don't know what's going on, but what you do know is when to kneel and when to get up, because that's all you did. You stood up and to pray on your knees. And
Did both your parents go to church with you on Sundays?
my parents, remember, my mother died when I was
Right, I
5.
understand. But before 5, did she go to church with you?
I don't remember that.
And after 5, did he go to church with you?
We went to church. He didn't go with us. But as soon as we got home, he would say, go take a laxative because of the communion.
Really?
Yeah, he would say, go take a laxative. That's where his anger was, you know. He was angry about religion.
But he sent you to church.
He let us go to church.
Right.
But when we came home, he would be standing there waiting for us, and he would tell each one of us, go take a laxative.
Because of that little tiny wafer.
He's making fun of the communion.
Ah.
But when I became an Adventist,
Well, wait, hold on. I want to just stay when you were
oh.
being raised Catholic. Did you celebrate the Catholic holidays in the home? Christmas, Easter?
Oh yeah,
And what would you do for Easter?
go to church and come home.
Was there a big meal? With
Yeah.
Would other family be there?
Oh, nobody else,
Nobody
just
else.
us. He would cook,
Right.
and he would. Only Christmas he got us little. You know what they use, those little things from wine.
A little shot glass?
Yeah.
So he would give you a shot of wine?
Each one of us a little bit of that wine.
So describe Christmas morning. Was it a special time or no?
See, you know, when you're so living such a traumatic life, you shove everything underneath. You can't remember much, and then when you're an adult and you are out of that kind of environment, your memory by then is damaged, and you can't remember a lot of things. But anyway, I'm trying to remember a Christmas. We wake up and wish each other Christmas. There'll be some presents. I don't remember putting up trees in Singapore. Just hang around.
What kind of presents would you get?
I don't even remember getting a present. Maybe we didn't have presents. I don't know.
Did you have birthday parties?
No cake or anything like that. We just get wished and given something.
Do you remember any birthday presents you received?
Any what?
Birthday presents
Birthday presents.
from your father? Did he buy you guys toys?
I don't remember having a toy.
Did you have a bicycle?
Yeah. I had a bicycle. I would ride to school.
But no toys that you remember. Was there a special meal for Christmas Eve that he made?
Mm-hmm.
What would he make?
Oh, he had such weird ideas about food. He would buy beef and broil it. For breakfast, he would broil beef and put oatmeal in it. And we had to eat that. He had to have chapatis, which is like naan, you know, the bread,
Right?
the Indian bread
Right.
naan. It's like that. And he'd serve us this oatmeal with this broiled beef. He thought everything he did was for our health. He told us how to brush our teeth and how we must brush our teeth. He was a combination of weird, good things and terrible things from one extreme to the other.
And you think he was very against the religion possibly because of what happened to him?
I do believe something terrible happened to him. That's why he couldn't talk about it, but he didn't know what to do with the anger. He took it out on us. I was his scapegoat. He favored my older sister. He was bad to her also, but he never beat her up. He would go to town and buy rattan. You know what rattan
Sure.
is? When you do this, whoa, he beat me with that. I still have marks. Beat me on my back, on my arms.
Would he tell you why he was doing it? Was
No,
it for
no.
dumb little things?
Oh, why? He would say I was running around with boys. He would accuse me, and we never had friends. We never knew boys. And he would make an excuse like that and beat me. And one day, he noticed my arm with this slash in it, and he said, "What is that?" And I burst out crying. I thought he would know what it was. He probably did, I don't know. But when I went to college in Lincoln, Nebraska, I got a scholarship. I was undressing one day and my roommate said, "What is that on your back, all those stripes?" I didn't know they were there, but they were from that rattan he beat me with. So, where were we?
Okay, so you're 17 years old, you're living with the pastor. We now know what your religious background was. He's trying to convert you or show you a different path, but you weren't totally open to it yet. How long did you live with them?
Until the missionaries came and the compound came alive again, and they were hiring teachers, and they hired
Is this
me.
when the war ended?
Yeah.
Okay.
The war ended and the missionaries came back from America to Singapore. And
Do you remember hearing the day that the war ended? Do you remember hearing it on the news?
I don't know how I heard it, but what I do know is that they. Yeah, we were I was in this house, and that man that helped me, his family came back from England, and we were there, and all of a sudden, Australian and English soldiers walking up our street, and we said, "What happened?" And they said, "The war is over." That's how I learned it, that the war is over, I tell you. So the same week, people got together, the neighbors, and they had a big party, dancing and everything.
So the missionaries start coming back, and what happened with you?
With me?
Did you stay living with them?
Oh, no. After the missionaries came back, they gave me a room in the dormitory. I lived there, and they hired another girl in the room next to me. She was going to teach for them, and I was going to be secretary to the president of the union. And I was such a good speller and such a good stenographer that they loved me. They didn't want me to leave them, but they were paying me so little I couldn't save to go to America. So I would go out and work and make 3 times as much, but then they'd come and make me feel guilty to come back and work for them. So I'd come back and work for them. So I went to the Lord and I said, "Lord, you're going to have to open up the Red Sea and let me get through, because I can't save enough money to go to America, and I don't have a sponsorship." And you know, I was secretary to this president at that time. I was the best speller, the best stenographer they had. They didn't want to get rid of me, But I started praying to God, and one day I was mimeographing for my boss, and the educational secretary for the Far Eastern Division. The division and the union were in Singapore, the headquarters at that time. And he came up the stairs, and I thought he was coming to see my boss. But he came right over to me, and he said, I have something that has never happened before. The president of Union College in Lincoln, Nebraska, has sent us 2 scholarships because they want students from the Far East to come to their college, but because it's in the middle of the continent in Lincoln, Nebraska, they all want to go to the coastal colleges. And so he's giving us 2 scholarships to get students to go to his college. And you know, he said, I don't want you to get your hopes up because you're past the age, and there are other eligible young people. So he didn't have to say another word. I knew what I asked the Lord, and he was going to do it for me. And so I said, okay. So he said, I'm going to go to the committee and I'm going to go to bat for you. And I got one of those scholarships.
Careful with your hands on the mic. That's okay.
I got one of those scholarships, and that's how I got to come to America.
Okay, so tell me, why was coming to America a dream?
Because as soon as the war was over, all my young friends who could afford it were going to America. And I had been offered a scholarship from Philippine Union College, and Singapore didn't have anything. And I did not want to go to Singapore's in the tropics, and I didn't think it could offer as much. I mean, the Philippines. And I didn't think it could offer as much as a place in America. So that's why I turned down the Philippines. And when I got this scholarship, they helped me. The missionaries all got together, and we put it together and sent me.
So how long did you live with that family?
That pastor's family? Weeks, few days or weeks, until the missionaries came and gave me that room in the dormitory.
Well, I thought you moved in with him when you were 17.
Oh, that man?
Oh, that was moving in with that man.
No, I didn't move in with him, but I sought him for help when I had to run away from that couple that took me. When my father came and chased me, I had to go to somewhere, and I didn't know anybody but that man. But he took me to the pastors.
But I thought you were 17 years old when that happened.
I was 17 when I left home. By then, time was going.
Okay.
And by the time the Japanese war, it was over in 41, I believe. No, it started
in 41.
41. It was over in 45. So by then I was, and then a few years I worked 5 years I worked in Singapore, and then I got that scholarship to come.
To America. Did you have a chance to say goodbye to your other siblings? Did you think you'd ever see them again?
I lived in the dorm, and I ate the food there and everything. My sister came to see me one day. She was already...
Which dorm? You're talking about in Singapore?
Singapore.
Okay.
My sister came to see me one day. She always felt that she wanted to persuade me back to the Catholic Church. And I knew that I had found the truth, and I wasn't going to be moved. So because I would not make any change, I was happy with what I had found. She was very angry already, but she came to see, and we were eating, and she was unhappy with what she saw, which we had trays, and everything was not to her liking, so she gave up on me. She was hoping if I stayed in Singapore that she would bring me back into the church. But when she heard about the scholarship, she was doubly angry. And so for 2 years, she would have nothing more to do with me. They didn't see me when I left. They were well off. and they could have given me that sponsorship, but they wouldn't have anything to do with me. For 2 years after, for 2 years, not for 2 years, for all the years I was working on my bachelor's degree in Union College, they would have nothing to do with me. As soon as I graduated and sent them my card, they repented, I think, and came to see me, and we made up.
And what about your other siblings?
My other siblings, my brother by then had come to America, went to Canada to live there, didn't care about it, came to see me, and then ended up living in Canada. What was that? Vancouver. Mm-hmm. And then he didn't like it, so he went to England. He settled in England, married there, and settled there.
And your other sister?
My Peggy was in Singapore, married to a doctor, and doing very well, but she wanted to come to America, so I helped her come to America. When she came to America, a few years later, her husband closed up his practice, came to America. 4 years ago, she died of liver cancer.
And so when exactly, what year did you convert to Seventh-day Adventist?
1943. I was baptized. Did I say 43? That was during the war. Yeah.
During the war.
Yes, it was during the war. Not long after I heard about it, because everything I studied was from the Bible. How can I not believe it? It's in the Bible. I believed with all my heart that the Bible was God's word to me. So everything it said, I believed. And I never had a Bible before. All I had was a catechism made up by the Pope and his priests, and I figured they were human beings. But they don't think they are. They think they are from heaven.
And so how did your life change after you converted?
Oh my gosh. I could hear in English, I could ask questions, I could sit in Sabbath school and learn and ask and pray directly to God. My life changed very fast. After I graduated from Union College with a bachelor's degree in nursing, I worked.
Okay, well, wait, let's back up. So you come to America, you knew English, correct?
Oh, yeah.
You come to America. What was that like? Because obviously you're alone, you don't know anybody.
Oh my gosh. You know, everybody thought I was from the jungles of somewhere. And so they would ask me questions like, did you sleep on a bed? What was your bed like? How did you have a refrigerator? Questions like that. And they never stopped asking me questions, because at that time they weren't teaching any geography. There was no war to talk about countries. So kids there at Union were very unlearned about the world and what it was like, and Singapore. At that time, Singapore was a good place, but not as popular as it is today. So I would have to smile in my mind, and yet I understood they didn't learn about those little countries so far away, and I had to tell them.
Well, you were in Lincoln, Nebraska. You were probably one of the very few minorities of any kind, correct?
I have to tell you this story. Not long after I got to Union College and lived in the women's dorm, this dean of women came out upset in the hallway. I have to send these letters, and nobody, I can't, my secretary called in sick, and I don't know what I'm going to do. Words to that effect. I was in my room, and I heard, and I came out to the hallway, and here she was. She didn't give me another look because she thought, oh, she can't help me. And I said, you need letters written? And she said, well, she answered me. I said, I can do them for you. She was incredulous, but she gave me the 6 letters dictated them, and I turned them over to her. Not too long after that, gave them to her. Perfect, beautiful letters. She never stopped talking about that. She couldn't believe, because they didn't know about geography, that we could learn also over there.
That's funny. So did you live in a dorm at Union College?
I lived in the dorm. I had a roommate, and I chose my classes, but I took 17 hours of classwork and worked 35 hours a week in the book bindery.
Wow.
And I was secretary to the book bindery manager.
So why were you working so much? Because you had a scholarship that paid for the college, right?
I had no money otherwise.
Right.
I never saw the money for my scholarship.
Right.
So I had to have something in hand. And no, I never got a check.
So that's a huge workload.
I'd come home and try to study and fall asleep, but I made it. I made it through school.
Did you do any dating? Did you do any dating in Singapore?
I ran away from home.
Right.
When I go to another man.
Okay, so you come to college. Did you socialize at college, or did you have any time because you were working so much?
Well, church time, Sabbaths, and going to eat at my roommate, and going to the cafeteria, walking back and forth. I got to tell you this one experience. I had never been in winter before. And I came from the tropics, and in the first winter I was there, my roommate and I were walking over to the cafeteria from the dorm, and winter was coming on, and I started seeing all the green leaves. Everything became like dead.
Right.
In the tropics, when everything becomes like that, it never lives again.
Right.
And then spring was coming, and we were walking from the cafeteria to the dorm, and she says, "Did you see those buds?" I said, "What buds?" She said, "Over there." I looked, and I had a God experience. It is living again, and I had never seen that in my life.
But to you, it was a miracle.
Now, I felt the presence of God because He was doing this. And then, coming out of class one day, it was winter time, and all of a sudden this ash, what I thought was ash, is falling on me. And I heard the word snow from behind me, one of the kids. Snow! I'd never seen snow in my life. I put my head up and opened my mouth.
Now, did you know about snow, but you had just never seen it?
Oh, I knew the concept of snow, but I had never seen snow or been in it. And that experience too was, but it was not the same kind of experience as seeing the dead tree live again, dead bush live again. Oh, that was something.
So you said when you were in college you went to church. Did they have a Seventh-day Adventist church there?
Church, along with the college, they had a church there.
But they had Seventh-day Adventist?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It was a Seventh-day Adventist college. We have colleges.
Oh, okay. Oh, right, because they sent you. Got it.
Yeah, they gave me that scholarship. We have La Sierra, PUC. We have colleges all over California and all over the United States.
What other experiences were so different from you being an immigrant? You had never had American food, right?
Right.
Was it different? Did you like it? Did you hate it?
Oh yeah. I liked the food. That wasn't important with me. Anything was okay, but it was good food.
And at this college, was it all girls?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, the dorm was all girls, but they had a men's dorm also.
Oh, so the classes were men and women.
It was a big college, and it was famous for its clock tower. They had a men's dorm and a girls' dorm, but everybody ate together in the cafeteria.
And you went to class together?
went to classes together, yeah.
So did you do any dating at college? Were there dances or anything like that?
No.
So you graduate in what year?
59. I started in 54, the fall of 54, and finished in 59.
Wait, so the war ended in 45. What were you doing for those 9 years?
I was in Singapore working as a secretary.
Oh, for 9 years. So you did it for a long time.
I worked for an import-export company.
Right.
And then when the missionaries came,
Right.
I worked for them for 5 years.
Right. Okay. So 1959 you graduate, and your degree was in nursing?
A bachelor's degree in nursing.
Okay. What made you want to be a nurse?
The man that gave me the scholarship, you remember?
Right.
He wanted me to be a teacher. And after I got to America, he called and asked me. When I went to Union College, I wanted to do medicine. But the psychologist said, at my age, I would have this big debt, and if I want to get married or anything, I would be burdened with this big debt. So he encouraged me to take nursing. I was more interested in nursing than I was in education. And I'm glad I took nursing, because then when I finished my bachelor's degree, I took the opportunity to get a master's degree in psych mental health because of my life and my background.
Was that also at Union College?
Yeah. No, the bachelor's degree was at Union
Right.
College. The psych mental health I took at Loma Linda University Medical Center.
Is that in,
School of Nursing.
is that in California?
Yeah, Loma Linda in California.
So you moved from Nebraska to California.
No, that was later on when
Oh,
I
okay.
got my master's degree. When I finished my bachelor's degree, the man who was the president of the college, the one that gave me the
Right.
scholarship, he came to me and he said, if you come to work, by then he was being transferred to Boulder Memorial Hospital to be the president there. So he came to me and he said, if you will come and work for me, I'll give you a $400 bonus. I couldn't turn that down in Boulder, Colorado. So I said, okay. So I went there and worked for him. Then where was I going from here?
Well, so how long did you work for him?
A few years. I can't remember exactly how many years. Then I thought I should go to Denver and get a master's degree there. But that would be in public school. And somehow or other that didn't work for me. I started it, but I quit it. It wasn't giving me what I was looking for. So I continued working in Denver until chronology is very difficult for
Okay,
me.
that's okay.
In 1963, I graduated in 59 with a bachelor's degree in 1963. In between there, I worked at Porter Memorial Hospital at all different departments
Is this in Denver?
in Denver,
Okay.
Porter Memorial Hospital. And then I married in 1963. And so my two kids were born in Denver, Porter Memorial Hospital in Denver, Colorado.
Okay, so tell me, who was your first date?
Never had a date.
Okay, so how did you meet your husband-to-be?
He came to the hospital,
As a patient or a doctor or?
patient,
Okay,
suicidal patient.
okay.
But he survived, he did okay, and we sent him home. One day he shows up. He was a tall, blonde, blue-eyed Swede. He had a thing about him that reached my heart.
Careful. That's okay.
And then, so we sent him home, and one day he shows up. I'm working the 3 to 11 shift, and this is psych mental health nursing. And so he doesn't leave, and I'm wondering what he's doing. He says, I need a ride home. I said, how did you get here? He said, I walked. So what could I do? I took him home. But I was impressed, even though he was a suicidal patient. I was impressed. With my background and my baggage, my brain wasn't thinking straight. By now, I'm almost 38 years old, and marriage never entered my mind. I wanted career. But he shows up, and somehow I attracted to him. So I took him home. Then he calls me, and one thing led to another. When I say that, I mean he kept growing on my mind. We ended up getting married.
When was the first time you actually went out on a date with him?
I
Do you remember a first date where you went? Do you remember what you would do on any dates when you were dating?
Do I?
Yeah.
What?
Do you remember any of the times you were dating him? Did you go to movies? Did you go to dances? What did you do while you were dating him?
The whole thing was a nightmare. It's very hard for me to remember. Something in my mind was telling me, don't do this. But my whole body was attracted to him. And so I thought, well, I don't remember. Oh, where was I living then? This was 63. I'm in Denver. I'm working at Porter Memorial Hospital, and okay. I'm living in this apartment. Oh yes, I was attending the Denver South Church at that time, and a doctor's family that I knew that had been missionaries in Singapore. I visited them a lot and would go there for lunches on Sabbath and all. But when Ron came along, I didn't tell them anything about it. And so I'm sure that we went and did things, but for some reason it's all blocked out. Because something in my mind was saying, he's a suicidal patient. Why would you want to get involved with this? But the fact, you have to remember my background, and the fact that he comes looking for me is something new to me. It's an experience. It's a welcome experience. All this led up. But I can't tell you anything about dates, but after we were married.
Well, wait, hold on. I want to. Do you think because you grew up with such an abusive man in your life, that when he came along and he was suicidal and maybe more fragile, that you looked at him as less dangerous and safer and you could take care of him instead of being threatened by a man?
That could be, but also people say that you tend to marry somebody like your father. That's what he turned out to be, but not because he was evil, but because he had a short circuit in his brain, and some patients like him would have seizures.
Right.
But instead of having seizures, he had rages, and we didn't recognize them as rages. We thought he would get mad and angry and violent. But after he died, my daughter did research and brought home the papers from the library, and we figured out what was happening was like when he had those rages, it was like having a seizure because of the impairment in his brain.
Was he, when did you get married? What was the date of your wedding?
January 15, 1963.
And where did you get married?
In the court. We didn't want anybody to mess, or we had no money to do anything.
No wedding party, you just went there and got married?
Got married, and then we went home, and his mother was so upset.
Oh, you didn't even tell anybody?
She wanted to have, if she knew that marriage was on the horizon, she wanted to be in it.
Did you go on a honeymoon?
I don't remember going on a honeymoon.
Did his mother like you?
I didn't like her. As soon as I saw her, I felt and I turned out to be right about my sensitivity, because she messed up our lives so bad. I blame the suicide on her.
Wait, why didn't you like her at the beginning?
She was tall and big, and it wasn't her appearance, it was her... No, you know, right then she was kindly and welcomed me, and I was intimidated by the fact that what I had done, not told everybody and,
right.
and shared everything. So I was feeling some guilt, so I thought she would treat me shabbily, but she didn't. She was nice to me.
Was his father alive?
Oh, yeah.
And what was he like?
He was a dear. He was so sweet.
Did they live in Denver also?
Mm-hmm. They lived in Boulder.
Okay. So you get married, and where do you live at first?
At first, when we got married, where did we live? In Englewood.
Okay.
Oh, what's that city in Colorado? Apricot. Word apricot comes to my mind. It was a little city.
Okay, well you're in Colorado. Was it a house, an apartment?
House. Right away we started buying a house.
And what was he doing for a living?
He was going to work in a kind of place where they were making some metal things, I don't know. He was making good money.
And what was he like as a person?
Ron?
Yeah.
When he wasn't having those rages, he was adorable. He was warm and loving, and when I was pregnant with Val, I was so big, and they invited us to a party, the church. People were having a party, and we went, and he took his clarinet along, and you know what he played? June is busting out all over. Everybody cracked up. So cute. He played a good clarinet.
Did he have these rages while you were dating?
No, I never saw any of it.
How long after you got married?
Not long, about it. After I got married, in that same year. We married in January. In that same year, I don't know when I got pregnant, but I lost that first because he beat me up so bad.
So he was physically abusive.
Oh.
So
he did the same things my dad did.
So the first
Threw
time
furniture on me, knocked me down, hit me in the eye.
So the first time he was physically abusive,
I thought, oh,
here we go again.
Here we go again.
But you didn't think I should be out of here. I should get out of here.
Yeah. No. I don't remember what I was thinking, but of course when I got pregnant I thought, no, I can't do that. And I lost it.
So you lost the baby because he was beating you?
Yeah. Yeah, he beat me really, really bad, so that's what happened. So when I got pregnant, during the times when I was pregnant, and some of those first years, I don't know whether, I can't remember his being violent like that during those first years, because we went on trips, we went on vacations, we camped, went to see places. Today my memory is not very good, but what are those big beautiful trees called?
Oak trees, walnut
Sequoias.
trees? Oh, sequoias.
We went to Sequoia Park, and we had many good times. And I think that well, I cannot tell you why he didn't have those rages so badly earlier. But I had gone to the doctor and told him that he should be on Dilantin. And the doctor put him on Dilantin because it worked for him. But after he finished that one bottle, he said, I'm not going to be dependent on this the rest of my life. And that was the undoing. That's what happened. Then he began to get these rages real bad.
So you're living in Colorado with him.
Yeah,
When did you have your first child?
Valerie was born August 25, 1964.
And what was that like to have your first child?
I worked till the day I had her, and everything went fine. I was supervisor of a very big new nursing home facility and was on my feet all day, 5 days a week. But that went well, and then I had her. I had the best obstetrician in the world because he was going around the world teaching everybody natural childbirth, Dr. Robert Bradley. And so she was a beautiful, healthy baby, and I had a very good pregnancy, and nothing happened there.
And who was next?
Next,
Yeah, another child?
Dan.
And when was he born?
He was born December 8, 1965.
Okay, any other kids?
No.
And so now you have two kids, two young kids, you're not working.
I worked all through my life,
Oh, even while you had the young babies?
all through my pregnancies, till the day they were born.
No, but did you work after they were born?
After they were born, I took maternity leave and went to work.
And who would watch the kids?
Babysitters.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, babysitters, yeah.
Was your husband less abusive after you had children, or he do things even
More.
in front of the kid? More.
More.
Why do you think?
Made him nervous, I think. I don't know.
Was he loving towards the kids?
Yeah, he was loving toward Valerie, but I think he was jealous of Dan.
Because you love Dan.
Because it threatened him
Right.
somehow.
What were the kids like as little kids?
My kids. I love them to death. How were they like when they were kids?
Mm-hmm.
Valerie was the most beautiful baby that was born you ever saw. She had reddish hair and this beautiful skin and everything. But Valerie, being who I was at the time,
Careful.
being who I was at the time, I thought, how could I have a baby like this? It was so beautiful, you know. I got used to it. But unfortunately, my mother-in-law had a baby, a girl. At the age of 2, she got sick and died. And my husband said to me, be careful. My mother fantasizes that Valerie is her child. I didn't know how to be careful.
Right.
I had no parents myself and was looking for people to hug. And I got close to them. And I got sorry for it.
Why did you get sorry? What happened?
Because she controlled our lives from beginning to end. No respite. She planned every holiday, every vacation, everything. She called all the shots. I was too burdened with baggage to understand or realize what was going on until I went to graduate school and took this class in family systems theory by Dr. Murray Bowen. This teacher had just come back from Washington State Washington University, George Washington University, and had 2 PhDs, and some of those classes were under Murray Bowen himself, who was a psychiatrist, a research psychiatrist, had just come up with family systems theory. I took this class, and when the semester was over, I went to the teacher and I said, "This is the kind of help I need badly. Would you help me implement it in my life?" And she said, "It's very difficult and painful, but if you're serious, I'll help you." And so she told me the first thing you had to do was write a letter to your mother-in-law. She was living in Colorado and I was here in Loma Linda, California. And so I wrote the letter and I took it to my teacher. She looked at it. She helped me with a few spots. I sent it to her. I was as honest as I knew how to be in the letter to let my mother-in-law know what I was feeling, thinking, and observing in the relationship we had had so far. And so the music started. I mean, she has a lot of friends. She belonged to a women's club. And so I got calls, one call after another. "Lena, have you lost your mind? What are you doing to Fern? Why are you doing this?" I said, "I am taking a class. Fern has controlled my life ever since I got married to her son. And I'm taking a class to help me know how to deal with it." And so they didn't understand that at all because of what they responded back to me. "She's not eating, she's crying all the time, she looks like death warmed over." I said, "My teacher told me to expect that. Mm-hmm. And so don't worry about Fern. She will get over it, and I will have accomplished something really that I need." So they never believed me or understood what could be so good that causes so much trauma. I tried to tell them, my teacher told me it would be painful if I really wanted to do it. And I said, "I feel it so much that I really want to do it." Well, time went on and I never heard from her. But I wanted to complete this process that I had started. And so so then we did what we had to do. I did it under the teacher's guidance. And the end result was she was angry with me. I was not going to do anything but what my teacher told me to do. So I just waited on the situation. 2 years. During those 2 years, I would write to her and try to help her to understand why I did what I did. But I don't think she ever did. But after 2 years, for some reason, she contacted me. And my teacher kind of gave me the idea that it would take time. So I was thinking maybe it's beginning to work now. And sure enough, she wanted me to invite her to come over. So I said, "You're always welcome." She came. I explained everything to her and told her why I had to do what I did.
Did she understand?
By now, she was melted, and she was friendly, smiley, and seemed to be happy that I was still in her life. And I was happy that she was coming around to it. And we were the best friends until she died. I mean, not the best, you know. There were some things that were very difficult for me to forget that she had done, but considering the pain we went through to get where we were, I was happy and accepted her.
Tell me about your time in Loma Linda.
I went to Loma Linda after my husband's death.
Okay, wait, you didn't tell me about that. When did he die?
Um, um, how did it begin? We were living in Illinois. What's the name of the town?
Downers Grove?
Downers Grove, Illinois.
So when did you move from Colorado to Downers Grove?
Colorado. And why did we move to? He was beating me up so bad that I had to take the children and leave, and I went to so many times, 2 or 3 times I had to do that. But this time I went to Washington, D.C. To work there. I had to leave because beating up.
Wait, so you took the kids to Washington, D.C.?
Took the kids and drove to Washington. I can't believe I did stuff like that because I have no compass.
So you just left. I mean, obviously you didn't tell him because he wouldn't have allowed you to do that, right? You just left in the middle of the night or in the middle of the day and just took off?
No, he was at work.
Right.
That gave me 8 hours to do something. Yeah. So I had to.
How old were the kids?
4, and Valerie was 6, and Dan was 4.
And where did you tell them why you were going?
Okay. Dan was with me, and Val was in kindergarten. They didn't know anything that was going on, but I told a fellow teacher, that what my life was about and what I had to do. It was Christmas time, and she said, "You come to my house, give the children a Christmas." And then, because I'm going home for Christmas, she was going home for Christmas. So I packed the kid, I pulled Valerie out of class, and she loved that teacher, and she cried leaving her. So we went to this teacher's home, spent that Christmas night there, gave the kids a Christmas, and then I started out to go to Loma Linda.
Okay, so let's correct this for a minute. In 1968, you left Colorado with your husband and kids to come to Downers Grove, Hinsdale area. And then 2 years later, in 1970, is when you left your husband.
Right.
So you took the kids, he's at work, you take the kids, and you go to Indiana to visit your friend for Christmas?
Yeah.
And then from Indiana, you drive to...
I'm on my way to Loma Linda, but I stop at Oregon. But first we stopped at, to tell her goodbye. She didn't...
To tell who goodbye? The woman in Indiana?
I'm thinking Fern, Colorado. Did we stop at Colorado? I don't think so.
No, so you went to Portland, Oregon.
That was before. Okay, so then we went to Oregon. I thought maybe I could work at Oregon for a little while. I was looking for a state hospital that would offer me a master's degree in psych mental health.
Okay.
But didn't find something that was good enough. So I went on to Loma Linda. From Oregon, it was kind of a rest stop. Then I went to Loma Linda.
Okay, now, all this time when you had taken the kids and you're driving, does your husband know where you are? Did you tell him you were leaving him?
He's dead by now.
Oh, he died. I thought you left him in 1970.
He died after I left him.
Oh, he died after you left.
Yeah, he just committed suicide.
How long after you left did that happen?
I left, and about, a day.
Oh, almost
His
immediately.
mother called me and told me what happened. He committed suicide.
And so you're on the run with your kids. Your mother-in-law calls you and says your husband committed suicide. How do you tell your kids that?
I don't remember. I just Valley helped me. I don't know how I told them. How did that happen?
You just told them? So this is more trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma that's constantly happening. I mean, you had to be very strong to constantly handle this.
Yeah. I don't. I know. I must have just told them that Daddy died because I can't remember. But what I do remember is when we got to Loma Linda and we were at our breakfast table, Dan, 4 years old, stands up in the chair and he says, "Mama, Daddy had to have committed suicide." 4-year-old. Killed himself, he said. I said, "Why you say that?" He said, "Because you told us never to play by that." The Downers Grove home had a railroad, a lawn and a railroad.
Right.
And he said, I told them how he committed suicide. And Dan says, "You told us never to play by the railroad. How Daddy must have killed himself."
I mean, that's pretty unbelievable for a 4-year-old to even know that that's something that could happen.
I never forgot that. 4-year-old stood up in the chair at breakfast and says, "Mama," he was trying to figure out.
Right.
He says, "You told us never to play by that railroad. Daddy must have killed himself."
Wow. So now you're in Loma Linda, you're trying to go back to school. You have a 4 and a 6-year-old. Did you have any money?
Not very much. I had to take a loan from the school of $100. I told them I had money coming, but didn't have it right then.
From what, life insurance or just money that he had?
No. Because of being a mother with 2 children, for some reason the government was going to send me some money, and I had a job, and that I was depending on that. But in the meantime, I borrowed $100 from the school, and they took the Valerie in, and Dan I kept with me, or I had a babysitter.
So you're starting over in Loma Linda, you're going to school to get
Yeah.
your master's degree.
Yeah,
And do you get your master's degree?
yeah.
And when you got that, where did you work?
My first job was to teach at the School of Nursing in Loma Linda. And that went for 5 years, but every summer they closed down and I had no income. And I had these little children. So I quit that teaching job and went to the medical center, worked all year round, and earned twice as much. And that's how we made that work.
And how long did you stay in Loma Linda for?
For 30 years.
So what was it like raising your kids in Loma Linda?
It was difficult because nursing is a very demanding and difficult job. And I worked on the floors until I specialized in rehab. I specialized in spinal cord injuries and head injuries. But before that, I was doing different units. Going to leave, had to be at work at 7 in the morning, so I had to have a babysitter come early for the children, get them ready, take them to school, and so then I worked from 7 to 3. That was my shift, and it was very traumatic. I hardly ever saw the kids, and then I got into counseling with the county and would work from 7 to 3. No, by then I had taken a job with the state hospital, Patton State Hospital, which was working with mentally ill people. And I'd work till 4 o'clock there, go straight to the counseling center, volunteer counseling, and I was doing that to gain licensure for counseling. But what the law was not at the time to demand certification, documentation. So by the time I finished and was ready to apply for licensure, Sacramento wanted documentation of all the counseling you had done, and I didn't have it. And I could have had it if I went back for a year, but I said no, I would sacrifice my children. They would never see me, and I don't know. I couldn't risk that. So I gave up on that, so I don't have licensure to counsel, but I had my complete marriage and family counseling curriculum done, and the psych mental health degree in that.
And did you raise your kids in this Seventh-day Adventist church?
Yes, and in Loma Linda. And thank God, that's the best thing I ever did, was go to Loma Linda. Their grandmother wanted them to live in Colorado and begged me not to go.
Right.
But I said I wanted my kids to grow up in Loma Linda. It's such a cultural center. It's such an educational center. And it's such a spiritual center. How could I not? So I said I want them to grow up there, and I'm always thankful to God that I did that.
And were you a member of the church choir?
I was for 25 years.
So are you a good singer? No, but you just wanted to be in the choir.
Something to do. I tried. They let me sing for 25 years and gave up.
Did you do any dating or remarry?
I didn't want to. I was a single mom and happy. The last thing I wanted to do was remarry.
Right.
But you know, when the kids got to be 12 and 13, this obsessive thought I couldn't get rid of was, how will they leave home with a father image so violent? What will they do with that? They will have no idea of a loving parent. I thought, Lord, are you putting this in my head, and what am I supposed to do about it? I don't want to get married, but I do have to get married to give these children a positive father image. So I said, you're going to have to pick the person for me, because
You said this to your kids?
to my God.
Oh, to your God, okay.
I was talking to God.
Okay.
I said, you know how much I don't want to get married.
Right.
So then what happens is, in the choir, this man's wife gets sick and dies, and she's hardly cold when he's looking at me. I can feel it. I can see it. I'm not attracted to him at all. But he's a good man. Everybody says he's a good man, and he's kind and whatever. So I end up marrying this man. But I said to the Lord, you have to send the person. He has to love my children first. And what happens is, he calls, after his wife had died and everything, he calls me and he says, do you think Danny would like to go with me to the Super Bowl party? I said, I don't know. I have to ask him. And I asked Dan, he's jumping up and down, Mama, can I go? I said, I'm asking you. If you want to go, Mr. Long is willing to take you.
Mm-hmm.
I send him, and he comes home jumping up and down, so happy and so glad he did it. My thoughts go to what I said to God. He has to love my children. Why would Howard think of that? So I end up, I ask people, they all say he's a good man. Everybody's got their faults. I found them out later. No communication. He was very poor with communication. But anyway, he was dean of umpires in baseball. He taught my kids and me all about baseball. He had this little book in his pocket, and he could turn to the page where the rule is and amaze everybody, and fabulous umpire. And so Dan enjoyed him a lot. So did Val. Val didn't take to my remarriage very well. I couldn't explain it to her. I did not very long ago, but I don't know what she did with it, because it was kind of late to explain that. But I only remarried for the children's sake.
And how old were you when you got remarried?
Um,
Or what year was it?
1978,
And how long were you married to him?
21 years.
And then what happened? Did he pass away?
He got Alzheimer's. What is that?
Alzheimer's?
Yeah. His whole family, his father, his sisters, all died from it, so I thought he wouldn't get it. But he did. 3.5 years, and then he died.
Tell me about you spent years in Reno, Nevada?
Valerie, now I'm single,
Right?
and Valerie is starting to have her kids, and she says, Mom, come and live in Reno. It was hard for me because I'd lived there for 30 years in Loma Linda. I had my little old ladies club and all those things, and church, and felt very much a part of the whole thing. So when Valerie kept asking me, it took me a year and a half to make up my mind. By that time I had settled. I moved in '01, and Rich, Valerie's first husband, was very dear to help me with packing and moving and everything and setting up in Reno. I will never forget. I'm always grateful to him for what he did for me. That was Val's first husband.
How long were you in Reno?
Till now.
Oh, you're still there. Okay. Tell me about your first grandchild. Who's your first grandchild?
Valerie.
Valerie's children. Your grandchildren. Valerie's your daughter. Valerie and Dan are your kids, right?
Bailey.
So Bailey was your first grandchild.
Granddaughter.
And then who was after Bailey?
Dustin.
And then who was after that?
That's it.
No, Dan's kids?
Oh, that's right. My brain is old.
That's all right. It's all right.
Old today. Olivia and Elijah.
Okay. So what was that like when you started having grandchildren?
It was heaven. I helped with the delivery with Val. I think I was present at one of Dan's kids at their birth. And God, loving, dear God, gave us beautiful grandchildren, every one of them. And Bailey, Dustin, I don't know what to say about them. I love them to death.
So you live with Val in Reno, but Dan ended up in Chicago, right?
Yeah, he got, yeah.
So do you see those kids, those grandchildren?
No, now that we're here today,
Right.
I hadn't seen them in years.
So
Because when Dan comes to visit me in Reno,
right,
they have school and stuff.
right. So tell me about your kids growing up. What did they each become? Getting married?
Valerie and Dan.
Yeah. So start with Valerie. She's older.
That's the best part of the story.
Okay. Tell me.
I love it. I sent them to our school, Loma Linda Academy.
Okay.
Loma Linda grade school for Val, and Loma Linda Academy, where they did all 12 grades, each one of them. Dan, never had a problem with him. He somehow had, he'd do his homework. He was compliant. Val, she had a little bit of something going in her, and but she made it. She did. I had to put her in kindergarten. She was young enough then when I got to Loma Linda. From there, I put her in our school. That first year I came. Oh, I know. I only left her in public kindergarten because we didn't have a kindergarten. But I took her out of there about a month later and put her in our school and borrowed that $100 from the school to have her there. Then as soon as I went to work, which was almost like the next day, and earned money, then I paid the school back. And I was earning all the time then after that, so I had no problem. We were happy with, well, I was earning enough to keep us afloat.
And did they each go to college?
Valerie finished and graduated from high school, and she thought she wanted to do business, and so she wanted to go to PUC, Pacific Union College. Found out when she got there that she didn't care so much about business. She said, "Can I take nursing?" I said, "Val, nursing is a very demanding and difficult profession, but the curriculum is a very broad-based curriculum. You'll get a lot of very good studies." So she came to she came back to Loma Linda and went to Loma Linda University School of Nursing and got a bachelor's there. And then after she got her bachelor's, she worked. Oh, that girl was so pioneering. She went to work at the school as a school nurse. Then she ended up in another place as at Liberty Mutual as their nurse supervisor. From there, she went to UPS as their industrial nurse. Trouble was the 5,000 records she had to keep, 5,000 people, and they wouldn't give her any aid. So, but from there, she met Rich, got married, got him a job with UPS as a pilot, and she got into, her mother-in-law had an insurance company going, and she joined her. Then Dan, he's a miracle. I think study came with his body or something. Mm-hmm. He never had to ask him to do his homework, and he was a straight A student all the way from beginning to end. He worked in the cafeteria kitchen of the Loma Linda Medical Center, and they all loved him. Then he, for his graduation from college, he went into selling Cutco. From then after that, he went into bank allowed him to go doing house appraisals, and he got $150 for each appraisal. Then he got himself. He did all the groundwork. I did not generate the ideas. He did. He ended up going to. We didn't have a law school or a pre-law school. So he went to Riverside, got his pre-law, and from there, Berkeley accepted him, and he did his law degree there, and passed on the first bar exam. And then, after a few years, he met Deanne, and they got married.
And Val, you said, got married to who?
Val got married on one of their class unions.
Reunion?
One of her classmates brought Rich along. There was no turning around from there. Rich and Val got together from there. And
but did they get divorced?
They got divorced, I don't know how many years ago. And
then is she remarried?
She's getting remarried June 23.
To who?
But it's been like 15 years they've been divorced.
And who's she getting married to?
To Tom Colby.
Okay. Have you done a lot of traveling later in life after the kids went off on their own?
Honey, I'm one of those people that don't care about travel. I sit. I lived in Loma Linda for 30 years. If I'm alone, I don't know where to go or how to go. If I married this man who had his good things about him, but he had seen this and done that and been in the army, and he didn't want to go anywhere and loved to nap, so I never got to go anywhere with him.
Tell me about your involvement in the church. Besides the choir, are you involved in the church?
I taught Sabbath school many times, and I got involved in the choir. Howard and I did their breakfast every morning, every Sabbath morning. Huge breakfast for the choir. We did that. We also took on 3 boys who were going to be expelled from the high school, Mexican kids going to school. They were so bad that school was going to throw them out. They notified the church. The church got together a committee. We formed what we called Excel, and Howard and I took on 3 boys. We would go get them at the school when school was over. Those kids got to school at 7 in the morning. By the time we saw them, they were famished. So we'd take them to Burger King and load them up, whatever they wanted, let them eat, took them to the library, and helped them with their homework. All 3 of them graduated high school.
Wow. What kind of a mother do you think you were?
I was carrying a lot of baggage, and it was interfering with my life because of not knowing how to deal with it. That's why I went to psych mental health in my graduate school. But as a mother, I wish I did not have to work so much. I worked all the time. I saw very little of my children, which pained me, and still I look back and feel bad about it. But I got babysitters for them, and that's why I turned down that licensure for, I could not go that far, but I had to have an education that I could earn enough for them. So that's why I did the master's degree. But when it came to getting the licensure for it, I thought I'd be sacrificing them, so I wouldn't do that. But I think in my heart I was a good mother because I wanted the best for them. But I get mad and impatient. I think all the decisions I made for their lives were good, but dealing with them was difficult because I was not there for them enough, and they were getting attached to TV and stuff. I took the TV away from Val, never got forgiven for that. And then they were doing things when I wasn't home, going to the neighbors and watching and all those things. Nothing really bad, but that was fine. I probably, when I think about it, it's a good thing it was at the neighbors and not anything else. So I was as good a mother as I could be under the circumstances.
Do you think your kids obviously grew up witnessing trauma and experiencing trauma, and they seem to have become loving, successful people? Do you think that that man who brought you to the pastor who turned you on to the Seventh-day Adventist was the key to changing your life?
I didn't tell you the sad part of it. That man, yes, he got me on the road. He got me where I needed to go. God was using him. What I didn't know was he was an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. And when the Japanese left, the English came back in and said that anybody that wants to travel to any country, go free. He was going to Australia. I said, I want to go to Australia. He had his wife and children there. When he went there, I wanted to go there to go to nursing school, but they could not give me any money, would not let me work, so I couldn't do it. I had to come back to Singapore. But when he went to Australia, he found his wife with another man, and he left her, and he took me back to Singapore. He went back to Singapore. Then he thought he wanted to marry me, and that was the last thing in my mind. So I ran away from him, and he ended up coming to look for me. By that time, the pastor's son, who was a prisoner of war, had come home with dysentery and ill as he could be. I was living there at that time, and he and I were alone in the house. He was sitting by the front door. I was sitting by the kitchen door, and the light was on in the living room. We were just sitting, just doing nothing. The mother and father had gone. She was a music teacher, so they had gone to a music student birthday party who had invited them. All of a sudden, the man that was helping me showed up because I refused. I had run away from him and didn't want to marry him. He shot that boy and killed him.
He shot him and killed him?
Yeah.
Because he was trying to get to you?
Yeah.
So he came in the house?
Well, the door was wide open. We didn't.
So he walked in the house?
No, I told you the boy was at the door, front door, on a chair, sitting there.
Right.
He didn't have to anything. He just walked up to him and shot him.
Because he thought he was with you or something?
No, because he wanted me.
Right.
And he thought I was with him.
Right.
I wasn't with him.
He just shot and killed him.
I was in shelter with these people.
So when he shot and killed him, did he then come into the house?
No, yeah, he came into the room where he came toward me. I was at the other door, and pointed the gun at me. He was going to kill me.
And what did he say?
He said, "I'll kill you if you don't come with me."
And what did you do?
Follow him. What else could I do?
And where did you go?
The boys in the dormitory upstairs heard the noise, went to the window and heard everything, and saw everything, so they were witnesses. And he took me to his sister's home and said, "You keep her, I'm going to go get an alibi." He went. After an hour or so, we heard people coming. We didn't know what was going to happen. It was his brothers were coming to assure me that I was okay and not to be afraid. And what they said, I'll never forget: a life for a life.
Wow. So then he was arrested?
He was arrested, and I had to witness and had to tell the truth, and he was hanged.
Oh my God.
What I've lived through.
Wow.
It takes a while to get your breath back.
Yeah, it does. What was the best time of your life?
Now.
My next question is usually what was the worst or hardest time of your life, but I think you've already told me all that.
My father. Well, I don't know how bad that was compared to this man coming.
Right, I'm saying you had a lot of harder times.
A lot, you know, they're all equal.
What are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of the decisions that I made for my children, because it wasn't easy making those decisions. I was driving on black ice to go to Loma Linda from Illinois, with these two young ones, 4 and 6, just crammed all their clothes in that car, that little Toyota car.
Are there any regrets or anything you would have changed about your life?
You know, sometimes I thought, why did I marry the first man that came along? Because I didn't want to get married. But I know the answer. Look at what God did for me.
Right.
He gave me 2 beautiful children, and look at the grandchildren. So I don't regret that. It was meant to be.
What do you want people to remember about you?
My granddaughter. What do I want people to remember?
About you.
I want them to know I knew God, or this would never have ended up like this.
So my next question is usually, do you believe in God? But we already
I
know the
love
answer
him.
to
I
that.
love him. He's with me every minute of every day. He's done what he's done for my kids, for my grandkids, and I'm ever grateful to him.
If you meet God someday, what do you think he would say to you?
He's not going to say anything. I'm going to hug him, and he's going to hug me, and I'm going to say thank you and forever.
What message do you want to leave for your grandchildren and beyond on how to live
I
a
want
life?
my grandchildren to know there is a God, he's real, and I wouldn't be here to look at my circumstances today. I live in a beautiful home that Valerie owns and doesn't charge me anything. A beautiful little home in, where am I? In Reno, and doesn't charge me anything. And look at what Dan did with his life. I had very little to do with it. I was so busy working. He did all the paperwork and everything and got that degree. I don't know how it happened without God.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.